Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of ECA Live for 2022. Happy belated New Year. Apologies to all those who are getting snow, particularly if you're on the East Coast and you are unprepared for it. Those of us in the upper Midwest, bundle up. I just saw the forecast and we are going to be chilly. And if you're in Wellington right now, I'm just super jealous. So, super important topic to start the new year with tonight. And I kind of want to dive right in so that we make sure if people have questions, we've got those coming in and that we cover a lot of ground. Because I don't know about all of you, but I have been super stressed since probably February, March of 2020. And I have felt an increasing amount of stress with my students. And that's what kind of sparked the conversation that we're going to have tonight. And so I am going to bring in my new friend, Greg. We literally have met by phone, but we've had such a wonderful conversation. And I think he's got a lot of good information to share, certainly with me and hopefully with all of you. So let's get rolling. We will bring in, hello, Greg.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited for being here.
I am so grateful. And I've told you this and I will tell you this now in public with an audience. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because first and foremost, if you could please tell those viewers who you are and what you do, because it's very cool and very helpful.
Yeah. So I am a licensed clinical addiction specialist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I am the executive director of a young women's therapeutic wellness program, working with young adults 18 to 29 years old. A little bit of the failure to launch, a little bit of that directionless young adult that's transitioning from adolescence to adulthood, but doesn't really know what that means. And I've been doing this work for many, many years. And with it, it's helping the student plus the parents. So the whole family dynamic wrap around to help them really figure out what it looks like to get out of the adolescence, young, big kid stage and into the responsibility growing up, adultolescence, if you will.
Yeah. And we certainly live in times when I can see a clear need for that for a lot of people.
It's astronomical, the calls we get, the people that are searching, and there's really no real way to get to everyone. And it is a crisis across the board for so many people.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. So I was connected with the program that you are with because of my affiliation with the IECA, because IECA has a therapeutic component, which I don't do. That's not my expertise. But, I had a conversation with Stephanie, one of your colleagues, just where we might have overlap. And the more I had that conversation with her, the more I was like, oh, this needs to go deeper. And then she kind of was like, no, you need to talk to Greg. She definitely handed me off. Totally cool, Stephanie. Don't mind. But we got to talking about, particularly since 2020, with all of the people who were locked in at home and all of the stresses that came in from every direction, and what was interesting to me is there is still, you and I talked about this a little bit on our phone call. There's a little bit of a negative connotation if people need support still.
Yeah. Still, I don't know that that's going to go away. Yeah. I don't think that even when the resources are available, when people really know that stigma is going to go away, because it's a lot of vulnerability. If you've read anything by Brene Brown, it is very real that it is about the shame, the vulnerability, the I don't want to let myself go. Yeah. I don't want to let them in. I'm scared. There's so much to it that is terrifying for these young adults and really all adults and human beings to experience throughout their life.
Yeah. And because we're not talking, there are different rehabilitation programs. There's, addiction, drugs, alcohol, technological addiction. We just mentioned that before we came on, but we're talking about actual just coping skills with stress in your life.
We are talking even more basic than anything you've just mentioned. We're talking being able to function, get through a day, feel all the feels, and let that stress come in. And not, I don't know, it seems so natural to kind of push it away, try to deflect it, get rid of so much of that pressure because it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And when things get uncomfortable, I start running, I start fighting, I start trying to freeze and I don't know what to do. And so it is about coping skills, but it's almost like a step before that and like a step deeper inside to what is that coping skill I would even use and why would I need it? and then figuring out what that is, because I don't think many people know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, so with students who may say, wow, okay, I'm feeling a lot of stress, or I'm feeling some of the things that you've just described. I mean, at what point does a student, or do a family member of a student, need to recognize some signs where outside assistance may be needed?
Yeah, Randy, that's a tough one, because I think there's so many components to it that it's like, if I started in with therapy, if I started in with addiction, if I started in with just being a human, like there are a lot of different components to it that really play in. And I think a lot of it is, like for our students specifically, they don't have direction. They don't know what they're doing. They feel aimless. They feel like they're kind of stuck. And I think that's a big, really uncomfortable piece for me to be able to say, hey, mom, dad, friend, foe, I'm stuck.
Right.
I don't know what I'm doing. But yet that's really the first thing that we can acknowledge. And then it's the triggers of, why am I stuck? What's really going on? What's deeper? And so I think there's a lot of different pieces that we could answer with this. I think it's, if I don't know how to communicate and I need those communication skills, there's one reason. If I am just really uncomfortable and I have a lot of anxiety and I don't know what that means, I might need some additional support. If I am, especially with that transition from 2019, everything is fine, to 2020, like all of a sudden you lose connection. Everything becomes electronic. Everything is virtual. Yet everyone is being told, hey, you're addicted to technology. And then it's the only means of connection and communication, whether that's in school or work, and everything became computerized.
Yeah.
And so I think that created a lot of uncertainty, and I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm supposed to feel, but I don't feel connected. So then it's this shame cycle, and I'm alone, and I'm depressed, and there's not many words for that. Like it's really tricky when we want to be doing something productive, yet we don't know what that really means. And so then we can't find the motivation to get there, because laying in bed, sitting on my phone is normal, and as normal as I can find right now.
Right.
And so I think it's that. It's when that's where we're at is one step. And then on the other side, it's the depression, it's the anxiety, like the diagnosable stuff.
Yeah.
Which is a very different world. I don't know that treatment always means I am sick, I am ill, I need help. It is, I need direction, I need mentorship, I need guidance.
Yeah.
And many parents don't know how to provide that for their kids. Many parents don't know how to communicate that. Many students don't know how to talk to their mom and dad about it. And I think that's where a lot of the disconnect is. Yeah. Let's slow down that conversation. Let's breathe a little bit, and let's say, what can I do? Where can we start? And it's really right where they're sitting, I think, is a really important piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for students and parents to normalize the reality of, you're not doing anything wrong just because you feel this. Because as you talked about earlier, that stigma, it comes in all the time. And my dog is having a fit. Sorry. So there's those pieces that come in. And I think as we feel that shame and frustration, we don't know what to do with that either. Yeah. Yet that is one reason why it might be time for some additional support. So whether that's an outpatient therapy, that's a program, I think structure is really important. And I know that when COVID came in, structures kind of dropped. Yep. Everyone had to find their own structure. We didn't know if we were going to go back to school ever again. Yeah. And they were like, hey, it's 3 weeks. We're going to be fine. And then 3 weeks to 3 months to extension. And it slowly became longer and longer. And I think that's where the frustration becomes for a lot of these is my mom's pissed because I'm back in the house and I'm stuck because school closed. And then I get really comfortable being at home. And my mom and dad do everything for me, and I can't find a job. And so we have all these excuses and reasons. Like those alone are enough to find support. Yeah. If I can't find normal in my life anymore, that might be a time for me to reach out to someone, whether that's a school counselor, a friend, a parent. Like we have to create a new community for ourselves because that was totally taken away from us. Yep. And I think in that lack of community or loss of connection is when we start going internally, and then it's that conversation with that critic inside that's like, hey, you're not good enough. You're trying, but you're not doing anything. And mom and dad keep telling you that you should be doing it at school, at work, and you're not because you can't. Yeah. And so I think that's another big sign. Like, what can I do and what can't I do? Because, and I think, Randy, a big disappointment that I've seen was with the evolution of adult adolescence. That transition period between childhood and adulthood is that kids are jumping out of high school and expected to know what to do. They're expected to know how to take care of themselves. They're expected to know how to manage their medications, mental health, their wellness, their movement, and then all of a sudden the parents are like, oh, you're being lazy, you're being whatever the words are, like your room's a pigsty, and then all of a sudden we start personalizing all these terms.
Absolutely.
And then we start realizing we're not that good of people because the world around us is telling us this. And again, Randy, this just becomes this weird cycle of uncertainty and confusion. And the reality is, like, the quick answer is, if I don't feel right, if I don't feel normal, then that's the time.
Yeah.
This is not what I'm used to. That's the time.
Yeah.
And I think we can get rid of the stigma. We can get rid of you need a diagnosis. You need a reason to find support, and just recognize support is part of daily living and being feeling fulfilled in your life.
Yep.
And we lost it. We lost every bit of that.
Yeah.
Unless we were able to connect on these stupid devices. And I was not great at it. I was really discouraged by it. And luckily, being in the work that I'm doing, I was an essential worker. So I didn't have that same separation, but it was weird. And it was different for me and everyone else.
Yep.
Like, families couldn't come visit. So then that became really weird, and everything was virtual, and we couldn't go on activities. And it was, how do we change our schedule for these young adults who were trying to find normal when the new normal has now been changed yet again? It's one thing after another. I don't know that there's any absolute answers to really any of these questions, Randy.
But that's why we're having the conversation, right? So we can just start to talk through. Well, and you hit on two specific contradictions that just kind of, it hadn't clicked in my mind until you hit on them. Number one, all these years, like 2019, right? Parents are telling their kids, get off your devices, get out in the world, right? 2020 hits, get on your device. It's the only way you're going to connect with the world. So you have that contradiction.
Yeah. And then,
and the other thing I was thinking was, the students have no coping skills in this new world, but literally no one does. So the parents can't even support them in those coping skills because they're in the same boat and they're literally all locked in the same house.
Correct.
That's
Parents don't want that vulnerability. They're not going to be like, oh, let me also tell you that I don't understand what's going on around me, because we have to be big and proud and know what's happening. And the reality is we're not. And it's okay to be maybe aware of some of those deficiencies. But I think the big thing that families don't want is for their parents, the parent, to look as naive and unknowing as the kid, because the children, whether they're young or adult, are supposed to go to their parents for support. And if the parent looks clueless, the kid's going to be super terrified. Yeah. And I keep using the term kid. I mean, like, anyone who is a child, whether that is 8 or 18 or 80, like the normalization of this is really important. And I think there's a lot of pieces that you hit on where mom and dad don't know. Yep. And every student is looking to mom and dad to know. And that's where that trust comes in. That's where, if mom and dad don't know what's going on, how am I going to be okay? Yeah. And if I'm looking for a program, if I'm looking for some kind of support, and my parents don't trust that, how can I trust it? And so it does take a lot of commitment from parents. Yeah. Parents have to trust the process and the experience before they can really trust some of those professionals. Yeah. Because we don't know them. We don't know what we don't know. And I think that's a really vital piece to this conversation.
Yeah. Especially because I, as a parent, you get right from the time that your kid is tiny, you get in that mode of becoming the expert to them, right? Like, why is the sky blue? Let me explain it to you.
I have every answer in the book.
Right.
Until now.
And to flip that switch in their minds, that's huge.
Well, I've even had a conversation with parents, because parents love giving advice. Parents love helping others understand that they've been here, and I was 18 once before too. And every kid or every young adult right now is saying, yes, and you've never been in this time. And parents have a really hard time understanding that. When I have a hard time understanding that, because it was very different for me, even as my parents and my kids. And it's this weird piece where, like, my parents don't ever talk about when their parents were our age and know what that's like. And so it has to be different today. I think it's really hard for all parties to understand. Is we got to come together as a family, and, as you said earlier, understand that we're all kind of in this weird little spot, stuck together, and it's all uncertain. There's no guarantee that I go to work, or I go to school, or I go to the store, because there's so much. I think it's a lot of energized controversy around what is real and what's not. And I think that's a big piece that students have to figure out too, is what does it look like for me to feel normal if my mom and dad don't know normal? It's a scary world, and my mom and dad are supposed to help. So and then I think this leads to, why would I ask someone else for help if my parents don't know? Why would they know? And that becomes a real vulnerability piece too. It's a scary world we live in, and I don't think it's getting any easier anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, and we went through a year of being told, well, don't get near strangers because they might breathe on you and you might get this disease. And now it's like, well, I don't have coping skills. Can you help me, stranger? Like that doesn't.
Right. And again, I think it's normalizing the unnormal.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's anything easy about it. And I know that it's uncomfortable, and I know that it's maybe a little bit scary, but the biggest thing is that it's so unknown. It's so unfamiliar that then all of a sudden safety becomes this big red flag.
Yep.
I'm not safe because I'm uncomfortable. And then as students work with people and parents work with professionals, we expand that comfort zone and build the resiliency zone and the window of tolerance that ultimately helps the education come in. And then it's no longer the unknown, but it's okay, I am learning and I'm going to be okay because I made it through today. And that's a sense of hope that I think we have to reinstill in a lot of young people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you just touched on resiliency, which I think resiliency probably has taken a hit in the last year or two, because if you may have started 2020 with some resiliency, but if you kept getting knocked down, having to build a toolbox to be able to keep coming back to that and keep rebuilding your resiliency. I would think that would be important, especially as we continue to move along in whatever part of the pandemic we're in.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that piece too is like when I'm trying to find a community and I am isolated, like I energize when I'm with people, not when I'm alone. And an introvert does the same, but different, but it's like, how do they find that energy to get back up over and over again? Because there's a threshold to resiliency. There's a period in time where resilience doesn't seem to matter anymore because I can't find a sense of comfort, belonging, even in my own skin.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I keep getting knocked down, I'm done. And then that gets a scary part too, where it's like, I don't know how to be done either though.
Yeah.
I don't know how to quit because I've always been told to go.
Now I'm stuck. Yep.
Now it's even more stuck. And I think it's a piece that I don't think is going to change.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a very similar rebound effect when things do become more normal. I think we're going to see the transition back into real life and face-to-face school and all that stuff to be just as difficult as the transition out of it.
Yeah. I can see that, because I remember even the first time that I traveled outside of a 2-county radius after being, and it had been probably 11, 12 months. And I remember like driving over the county line and just having a moment and going, this hasn't happened in a while. And my brain just kind of needed to reset. It was strange.
Yeah. And again, I don't think that's abnormal. I don't think you're alone in that. Yeah. I think you and so many other people, including myself, have had an experience similar to that, where it doesn't seem real. I don't know. Like I feel like it's what we see in movies. It's that scene in the movies where it's like something's off. I don't know what it is, but I feel it. Like we all know that feeling. We know it well. And I think that's what we have to normalize, is that feeling. Yeah. Because it's so uncertain, it's so scary. It's like again, it's a sense of there's kind of a sense of urgency behind it too, because as you talked about earlier, mom and dad want productive. The students don't like feeling stuck. Right. Kids don't like that feeling of not having resilience and not having motivation and drive and energy, yet they're there. Yep. And mom and dad don't like being in that space, and they're there. So what do we do from there becomes, I think, a bigger question that we're trying to answer with all of this of when do you find support? When do you reach out? And it's just as important for students to reach out as it is for parents, as it is for professionals, because we're all in this together.
Yeah. Well, and I think, when I was at the CPI horse show last week and I was talking about, I said, look, this is something that literally everyone has gone through together in some form, and everyone's experienced it a little differently, but we need to give ourselves a little grace in that, because again, all of us together. And so I think when it comes to seeking that outside help, there may be families that are listening to us talk tonight that go, you know what, just admitting that, having a conversation and saying, we all feel weird, we all feel stuck. Maybe that opens up things for them and they can all start to find resiliency again, start to move forward. there are going to be students, there are going to be parents who need to go another step for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so if there are families that look for some kind of outside option, I mean, what types of options? I mean, I know that literally there's a gamut.
Yeah, there are a lot of options.
Yeah, but what would some of those options look like for families, just in case they're sitting here going, yes, we need help, but we don't know what that might look like?
Yeah, that's a scary conversation, because it's, again, the unknown, and it's that trust piece, and we're asking these professionals to come in, and I don't know who they are, I don't know what they do. Right. I have to trust them. My kid has to trust them in order for this to be successful. Yeah. And so
I've seen Dateline, something could go bad, right? Like all of that.
Yeah, the family that came today actually to our program was like, this looks like the road from Wrong Turn. And I was like, guys, let's not go there. But again, it's that feeling, it's that sense of like, I have no idea what to expect. And so, but it's in every environment. It's in every single environment you're going to look for. And of course, there's like outpatient therapy. That's like the let's go to your therapist's office, I'm going home at night. Like, so that's like the bare minimum. That's what I believe everyone should be doing, just to maintain some kind of semblance of safety and mental health. And I do believe there are many, many steps beyond that. And I don't know that outpatient is always the best option. You know, I think it's the easy way. It's an easy way to find support. But again, that's becoming less accessible because everyone is seeking it. And so there's a couple of tiers maybe that we would go into. And a lot of it's based on level of crisis, level of safety, need, and intervention. And I think the safety becomes a bigger part of that conversation. And is my child safe? Answers a very different question depending on that level. Am I safe with my child becomes a very different level. You know, and I've worked in all of them, you know, and so we're talking like inpatient hospitalization, which is very crisis, immediate, like someone is going to die is kind of reality. And it's that fear, but that's not where we all want to go. We want that to be like absolute last resort. Yeah. And so that's kind of the scary part of it. But the rest of it is a little bit, I want to say, more mellow. And we start with wilderness being the highest level, where students are going to come. It's going to be like a 2 to 3 month process. They remove all distractions. You go in the woods, connect with nature, have therapy. But then the bigger piece of that is the community you connect with. The other like-minded people who are having very similar experience that need a little bit of that, maybe heavier intervention. And this is more identified as like behavior modification. If you're stuck in the basement, you refuse to do anything, that's the level. And that's wilderness therapy. There's a lot of adolescent and young adult programs out there. The next level would be like residential, which is longer term. So we're talking 9, 12 months. And these are for adolescents, young adults. And this would be not quite the level of crisis behavior mod, but this is more like, let's slowly integrate. Let's learn to develop some of these tools, and let's normalize a little bit. But let's also get back to normal life a little bit more too. We might be doing some school, some work, some family therapy for sure. But it's really, how do I apply this to me and find who I am? So it's a lot of identity exploration, but really slowing down that process with removal of the distraction.
Yeah. And I was going to say, and taking them out of the normal environment to help facilitate.
Yeah. And that's wilderness too. And so again, I think a lot of it's distraction removal, just getting rid of technology, relationships, responsibility for a little bit, simplifying it to learn something different, and then figuring out how to apply the skills to that distraction essentially. So there's residential. Then from there, usually it's a step from there into like a transition support, which again is longer term, but a little more normal. So you're going to be engaged in the community. You're going to be getting a job. You're going to be going to school rather than just doing it online or whatever. And it's a little more like, I would say, autonomous or independent, but it's building that credibility up to then be able to integrate into independence, living on your own. Then again, that's where you get back into outpatient therapy. Yeah. And that's where you kind of go through that spectrum. And so our program, Skyterra Embrace, is kind of in the middle of all of that. And then we remove that distraction for 8 weeks rather than the long term. And it's hard to say that every student needs wilderness. I believe wholeheartedly in wilderness. I think it is an incredibly transformative experience that everyone would benefit from. And depending on the stage of life and the age, maybe it's work, maybe it's school, it's not quite that level. And that's where a program like ours comes in, where it's progressive, it's innovative, but we have therapeutic health and wellness. So we're therapy, so to tackle those stigmas and mental health and depression and direction, but then also the skill development, the life skills, the nutrition, the movement, and we have all these pillars that can help students to really figure out how to apply themselves. But it's slowing down and learning what I like and what I don't like. in an environment that does allow us to really open up to kind of the normal of what am I supposed to be doing in life? Like, this is where the direction comes in. I'm not living in the woods. I'm not living in a tent. Like, I'm in a house, have a bed. I'm trying to find jobs. But again, it's slowing down even from a step from that and saying, I'm trying to get along with people. I'm trying to build a community and find a sense of belonging. I am slowing down to learn how to cook and eat good food. I'm going into a gym space where I can move my body and learn from a professional. Because when we go to the gym, it is scary. When I go to the kitchen, it is scary. And I'd rather skip the gym and go eat out. And so we slow that down to remove that, but normalize it and say, we're going to go out together as a group. We're going to go to the gym as a group. And so it's that connection piece and that community that I believe is the most fundamental piece that's missing right now with COVID disruption is that belonging. And because if young people or any humans, I keep saying like young people, it's really all of us. Like, we're all in this together.
Human beings, just to be clear.
Humans can be comfortable and complacent, sitting on their phone in their bedrooms, sleeping all day, watching TV and eating food. Like, we're going to do it. And so it's teaching responsibility, teaching accountability, and really helping understand what that looks like. And again, it's just one more level in that spectrum of what students need. And it's very individualized, every one of those. Yeah. And so depending on where you're at with that experience, if you're the student or if you're the parent or you're the friend, like, this is where that conversation has to start, is what support do you need?
Yeah.
And I do believe that support is necessary. I don't know that it's a yes or no. Yeah. It's a yes and what does that look like conversation. And so and I think that having that conversation, reaching out to the admissions people from all those programs, advisors like such as yourself, other educational consultants can help, but it's finding the people that know the people is the tricky part. and I think that's kind of scary. I think that like me saying all these words is great. Randy saying all these words is great, but you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know the questions to ask. So it's finding the right person that can guide. That's why we have admissions people, and that's why you have admissions people. That's why we work as a team. And that's kind of the reality of it is if you find a place that you think is fitting, ask the question if it's right or not. They can also help guide. It's about taking that first step and saying, we need help, and being vulnerable and kind of jumping into that conversation as a family, not as parents, not as a kid, but do it together, because that's what's sustainable. That's going to get us through to the end. Yeah.
And I think too, and I don't want to trivialize any of this conversation by what I'm about to say. So please, listeners, know that I'm not. But I said to you before we came on, I said, next weekend I'm taking my young horse up to a trainer, partly because I'm very busy in February, but also because I need someone not emotionally invested in his situation to interact with him. Right? It's that time, because I've been like his mother and I have feelings.
Yeah, and isn't that weird? It's weird. Like we have that connection. All of a sudden, love becomes this hindrance.
That's literally where my brain went. I was thinking, if I'm a parent and I see that my child is struggling, I love them so much. I want to help them. And maybe that is the time to engage someone who can come in from outside, who doesn't have that emotional investment, but can say, oh, objectively, let me help you. Let me provide, a lot of this sounds like it's literally independent life, but with a safety net. And we all want that safety net.
Yeah. Mom wants it. Dad wants it. Student wants it. Like, I want it for everyone else too. And I think I don't think that conversation is being had near as often as it should. Yeah. Because again, it's vulnerability, and it's I don't want to ruin this relationship I have with my child, so I'm not going to say anything to them, even though I know they need help. Yeah. And I think, Randy, you make a good point. Maybe it is the parent that needs the help, and it's that accountability that can start that conversation too. Yeah. Because like there's a lot that my parents couldn't help with that I needed to find a support with. Yep. There's also stuff that like I do really well with that other therapists don't do really well with, and vice versa. And I think that's where you really got to figure out what you and your family need, and then be willing to have that conversation, but come together and say, this is what I'm seeing. And there's phrases we can give, right? Yep. I noticed that, and I wonder if. I noticed that something's up and you're not yourself. I wonder if something's going on. You can help me understand. But it's slowing down, having those conversations, and sitting to listen. Yeah. As you said, Randy, parents want to fix. I want to fix. And we have to be willing to slow down and say, this is not my fix. Yeah. And we have to be okay with that discomfort and ask for that help. Yeah. And then if we can do it, then those that are learning from us, our children, our friends, those that are kind of the bystanders, can see that and they can then practice. They can say, you're right. That's really cool. It's admirable. I need help too.
Yeah.
But you have to start that conversation somewhere because it's a really scary conversation.
Yeah.
It's a lot of vulnerability.
Well, and I think too, the generation of parents that are sending their students, like I think of my clients who are going off to college and you know, I remember when I was getting ready to go to college, my mother was like, all right, this is how you do laundry. Let's go over this for the 14th time, right? Let's go over all of these basic things, you know. And I think we have parents that are sending students to college with that same mindset of we need to go over laundry again. We need to go over AAA and how to get your tire changed if you need to. And we're forgetting, do you have these skills when you have a fight with your roommate, when you have that bad day, when you sit in the class and you suddenly start that negative self-talk of I'm not smart enough to be here.
Yep.
The college let you in, you're smart enough to be there, but having the skills mentally to get yourself through that, to me, that's a conversation that parents, you better start having that one like yesterday.
Last year.
Yeah.
Like we're talking like pre-COVID conversation. Like, because the reality is like, I think the expectation has always been there. You know, as an adult, here's the laundry list of things you're supposed to be able to do.
Yep.
And we are seeing, even in our program, more and more that have no clue what to even begin, like how to even begin that conversation.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is because parents don't know how to teach their kids to do it because they've always done it.
Exactly.
Like my mom always did laundry for me until I was like, Mom, I need to learn how to do the laundry. I appreciate you. But it takes that initiative. That's missing in a lot of households. And it's scary. It's hard. But I think it is that. Let's look in the mirror real quick as parents and say, what am I doing and what can I help with? And how am I communicating that? Because like I talk with our students all the time and I want them to get a therapist before they leave. I want them to call their physician and get a medication appointment. I want them to figure out how to get an application for school.
Yep.
They are like deer in the headlights. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. Like let's try this now. And then it's like, let's hold hands and let's look at the number. Let's dial it together. Let's put it on speaker. I will communicate. Right. And I'll make myself an appointment, and then you can do it for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Observe. Let's. Yep. Take notes. Right. Yep.
But again, I think that's kind of the missing piece is parents just expect kids to know how to do it. Yep. And then they're doing it, and you're like, where did you learn this? Like, did you ever learn it? And then it's almost scary to think that this is the future. Is these kids that want so badly to be successful, yet don't know how to do it, and then don't know how to get the support from others, from mom, dad, friends, teachers, mentors, whoever it is, because they don't know how to ask the questions. They don't know how to ask for help. Yeah. I think it's really unfortunate for those of you who might be out there who are like, how do we even start that conversation? Because it's almost too late. Yeah. And I want to reinforce the fact that it's okay to start now if we're doing it on purpose. Yeah. And I think that's really a hard conversation to have. It's humbling, and it's, guys, I didn't do what I should have done maybe. And it's taking accountability for yourself to then have that conversation and say, hey, do you know how to do laundry? Do you know how to make food? Rather than here's what you're expected to do, because that gets really scary. Yep. That is like fight, flight, freeze mode right there. The first time they see the laundry machine, you're just like, I have to do it on Sunday. Okay, it's Monday. I have a week to prepare mentally for this. I'm going to watch everyone else do it. Right. And then hope I do it right. And there's something that shame cycle of I'm not doing it right. I'm not good enough. Yep. Yeah. And it gets so scary. And then that's when mom and dad are like, hey, let me swoop in. Let me jump in and help. Let me be the one that comes in and helps you, because that's what I'm supposed to be. And parents have to stop doing that too. Yeah. Parents have to the hard part is like young adults have to fail at something. Exactly. And I would rather it be laundry. I'm not speaking for parents, but literally if they want to wash the reds with the whites and make some stuff pink, like fail there. Okay. Yes. Low stakes. And I think the hard part is like, even that's really a lot of pressure for a lot of these young adults. Mm-hmm. And so then it's like, they don't know how to ask for help. So they like stop washing their clothes sometimes. And you're just like, ooh, let's take a step back to when we were 12. Yep. And that becomes this weird shame conversation again of, I should have known this long ago. Yeah. Yet somehow I missed it. Yeah. How did I miss it? And then it's that negative thoughts, the cognitive distortions that just go. And it's a lot. And because I think about that every time I get to the time of year when my students have to write their essays for their applications. And these are brilliant students. These kids, I don't work with kids who are stupid. They are all geniuses, right? They're so bright. Yeah.
And the one thing, and I think this ties in exactly with what we're talking about with the life skills, is every single one of them wants to know, well, what am I writing about? What's the right answer? And I'm like, you're writing about you. You're the right answer. And something that open-ended, like, you don't have to do laundry on Sunday. You're literally allowed to do it on Tuesday morning if you want to. Like, but without those parameters, without a right answer to look for, I'm finding that's where a lot of them get lost and are just like, okay, I'm out here without a map. I need a compass, help.
And then what are they doing? They're reverting back to all those old patterns of communication, of resilience or comfort, right? Like they start maybe trying to get back to where they were because that's comfortable, rather than continuing to say, nope, I need that map. Where do I find it? I need help. Where do I find it? Because it's so much easier to revert back. I will tell you that right now. It is. I would so much rather be able to revert back to when I was 8 and had 0 coping skills. It was okay. Because now I have to have them, and it's not okay if I don't, is the mentality that we have. And young adults have that same mentality of expectation of, I should have these skills, and then they don't know what they are. They don't know where to find them, but they're inside. And I think that's where we start doubting. And it's like, I never had to use them, so I don't know. And then we have the conversation of education and, hey, let's walk through these skills. They're like, well, I learned that a long time ago. And it's like, oh, let's use this as a refresher then. Like, let me refresh your memory. And how can we do this? And then it's all about role play again. They have to have experience and practice in order for any of it to set in. And it gets really scary and lonely and really dark when we don't know what that's supposed to look like because we're doing it wrong.
Yeah, that's the thing, the word wrong, where I'm like, okay, but I mean, technically, there's a way to do laundry wrong, but there's also a lot of different ways to do it right. And just like, get it done. Cold water, hot water, like it's.
And like, low stakes, right? You said that earlier, like 0 consequences. I'd like to clean clothes, which is natural consequence, but we wait for the worst punishment to come up. We wait for the washing machine to break. And so we're like, let's push all the buttons so it does break. And it's almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy of sabotage of like, my mom didn't do it for me, so let me make sure she knows I can't do it by ruining everything. Like, that's what I did when I was growing up, and it didn't work very well, but hey, that's where we're at. That's why I'm here today. So because it's like, it's that refresher. It's the reminder of it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to try and fail. And that's where resilience comes in. You got to try again because that's going to lead to success. And success has so many different forms now. Failure is not like, it's so black and white sometimes that failure looks like the only option. So why try when my success looks different than your success? Becomes a very valid conversation.
And by the way, families, the laundry here is also a metaphor. It's not just actual laundry.
I do appreciate that clarification.
I figured I'd point that out in case people are like, okay, I don't know what they just started talking about laundry, and that seems not like.
We can find a different metaphor to use. We'll move on.
Laundry was easy, guys, but no, I think because I would think, particularly after the year of seniors who had to pick a college and kind of did that online and made a guess, spun a wheel, flipped a coin, whatever, or even just pre-pandemic, students who got through that first year of college, hopefully they got their laundry done. But I would think a lot of the students you would see in your program would be coming out of that going, okay, I just learned what I don't know. Like that thing you were talking about, like, you don't know what you don't know. And then you get there and it seems like everyone around you does. They may be faking it really well.
100%. But they get really good at faking it. Like I lead a life skills class that's called You Don't Know What You Don't Know. And we just start brain dumping on the whiteboard all the things that I'm curious about that adults do. And then we walk through them, and a lot of them are like, oh, I did know that. I didn't know that, though. That's really cool information. And
do you Zoom that class? Because I would sign up.
It's usually like 401ks and investments and credit cards and all the adult things. But what are we also taught? Like, don't get credit cards because they're bad, and every parent has a credit card that they're using. Don't get into debt, and every parent is in debt. And it's like, don't be super like spendy, but kids see their parents spending all this money, and they're like, where's your budget? Like, I never learned this. I just see you spending. So what do? I learned to spend, and I'm really good at it. And then it's slowing down and saying, well, I don't know how to budget. I don't know how to manage my time. And so with those social skills, with the regulation and coping skills, we do teach those life skills, helping them understand it's okay to not know because we're at very different stages of life. An 18-year-old is very different than a 29-year-old.
Yeah.
Is very different than a 50-year-old. But it's because of experience. It's not because I didn't try. It's not because my mom or dad has more money or is more versatile than yours. I'm older, and that's why mom and dad love giving advice.
Yep.
Because I've been there and I know it. And so then in our program, the 28-year-old, the 25-year-old can help the 18, 19, and 35-year-old to figure out what they don't know. But again, it's so diverse, and we're seeing more and more students come in with just these deer in the headlights of what do I even know? What do I know? Like, I mean, let's start there.
I'm not even sure anymore. I've started second, third, and fourth guessing myself. Right.
Right. And I think it's that confidence, the self-awareness. But it's really living your life and participating as an active role in your life.
Yep.
That I think a lot of young adults haven't been able to do because of the interruption that we've had with increased mental health over the last couple of years.
Yep.
And all the stigma. I can't ask for help. I'm going to look weak.
Yeah. And everyone around me seems like, let me emphasize the word seems like, they have it together. They know what's going on. Therefore, I can't be the one who doesn't.
I can't look dumb. That's going to make it look worse. Let me fake it.
Yeah.
And they get really good at faking it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's no foundation. I mean, there's just, And I think about, I just had a talk with the group that I went through our IECA, our training institute with, and we got so frustrated coming out of that because we would keep saying, there's got to be a model that you can build your business on. There's got to be like someone literally should write this out for me step by step, and I should be able to follow it, and I should be successful. Yeah. And everyone we talked to who'd been in business 5, 6, 10 years said, it's experience. You have to go through it. You have to figure out what works for you. And it was the most irritating thing we had ever heard.
Oh, 100%.
And now I'm 10 years into my business and I'm like, nope, you got to go through it. You have to have the experience. There's no blueprint. Yeah. And that's literally, I mean, that's life, right? It's okay not to have all the answers. You should learn how to do your laundry before you go to college, kids, but it's okay not to have all the answers.
Yeah. I think it gets kind of scary when your friends can do it and you can't. But I think it's kind of fun when you can do it and your friends can't. And it's fun when your friends can do it and you can't because you get to learn together. But again, that's so scary and foreign now.
Yeah. Well, you can't put on Instagram that you're bad at something. That's right. You can't do a TikTok video that you're bad at something. I think the social media has come in too because you want that appearance of being totally together, totally on top of it, totally successful. And you can't admit your failures there because that would be embarrassing. And then everyone would know about it. And I think we've gotten to the point of, I do blame Instagram a little bit because we used to be able to filter everything. My picture wasn't perfect. Well, I'm just going to filter it and make it artsy. And now it's great. Yeah. And you can't do that with real life, right? Well, you did the laundry wrong. It's pink. Okay. We got to change it.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of shame and embarrassment and frustration and all of that. Yeah. And I think we go back to that same idea of you have to experience it. Yep. You have to make mistakes in order to know what success looks like. Yep. You have to know who you are before you can really connect in a healthy way with any social media. Yep. Because you're going to sacrifice everything to fit in. And I think that's where it becomes almost this identity crisis for all these young adults that are creating these TikToks and Instagrams. But what is it? It's all the good stuff. It's not the mental health unless it's a cry for help. And you can't actually be open about it or else someone's like, oh, Randy's not doing well because you posted that. And also we have these texts coming in like, are you okay? Are you okay? And it's like, I'm simply expressing I'm having a hard day. Yeah. Like, let me just normalize that real quick because it's okay to struggle, but it's almost this crisis for even voicing it. So then we don't do it. And
exactly. Yeah. I was making a grilled cheese sandwich and I burned it. And I mentioned that, guys, it's just a burned sandwich. Like, I'll move on. Tomorrow's another day.
And we have to make it a big deal. Like, that's where the energy comes in. And that's where I feel connection is what all the likes I get. And that's a huge driver for anxiety. Yep. It's a huge driver for inadequacy and the sense of lack of fulfillment. Yep. It's because I'm not fitting in and I'm not the same as them. And Randy and I post different pictures and it doesn't matter what it is. It's never good enough unless it's fake. And it's this reality that we create it's like virtual and I can be whoever I want on social media, which is why it makes so much sense that these phones become so comfortable because I can be anyone I want. I can get all my needs met right here in this seat. And like I can talk to Randy who's miles and miles away and connect with all these people in the world from right here.
Yep.
So why would I need to go anywhere else?
Yeah. And control the message to a degree that you can't do in person. In person, we've got that. And that's okay. So this is a question I want to ask. This actually just brought it up for me, because I have actually had conversations, face-to-face, normal human interactions.
Real life.
I know, real life conversations with 18, 19-year-olds who have actually admitted, they're like, I don't know how to have a conversation with someone, like, because we just text our friends, or we just, we're interacting that way. Is that one of the skills that you guys are working on, is, okay, how to converse?
Yeah, and I feel like it's such a, I don't want to say sad, but it's such a juvenile experience that we're supposed to have, that I think that those people that we're talking about how they don't know how to connect were able to at one point. They could, until disruption became virtual. And then all of a sudden I can text everything. But you see it all the time. Like for years and years, it's easier to have hard conversations by text or email rather than having them face-to-face, because I don't have to feel anything. I don't have to show anything, and I don't have to be vulnerable. And that's what we teach, is a little bit more around that world of how do you be vulnerable? How do you give and receive feedback? What is communication? What are those skills? And then how do you have hard conversations with friends, partners, parents, kids? Doesn't matter who it is. We're teaching everyone. It's a family system that needs help, but it's not just the 18, 19-year-olds, unfortunately.
Right.
Mom and dad who have an 18, 19-year-old who don't know how to communicate with them, because everything's been through text and disconnected. And I think there's a lot of walking on eggshells. There's a lot of opportunity to kind of skirt around things and brush them under the rug and say, I'll deal with that later. And then we forget about it. And then all of a sudden it's a much bigger deal next time, because last time we did this, and we start bringing up the past. And it's a sense of, I'm never good enough. I can't be good enough. And so, yes, we do hit those. I love those conversations. It's more of like a social skills class than it is like a conversation class, because we're not teaching the language. Like, when I think of conversation class, it's like, I know I speak Korean. And so it's like, I'm in conversation with people, so I'm learning how to talk, but I'm learning the language. Like, we're all speaking the same language, but it's such a diverse dialect, if you will. That, like, emojis mean a million different things. And I'm like, what, you text that to your mom? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. And mom texts something back. And I was like, Mom, I need to have a chat with you. That seems really disrespectful. Like, what are we doing here? And so it's like those conversations, and it's almost reverted back to like a very juvenile sense of connection and communication. So everything has to be simple. I can't have hard conversations. We slow all that down, and students don't have their phones with us. And so if they're having these conversations by letter writing, and so when it's like, hey, let's write that in a letter. I get you want to talk to your mom about it. Go write it down. And they get so pissed. They're like, why would I write it down? It's this long. And I was like, go ahead and write it down. I'll send it to your parents, because we don't have a phone. And they're like, you have a phone? And I was like, I do. You're right.
I do.
Like, I'm not getting in this. Like, you're going to write a letter. It is what it is. Avoid the power struggle and just say, hey, it is. Like, this is what we're doing. And I active listen, and I hear you want this. And we can get this done by letter writing. And then it's like, you wrote what to your parents? And it's the whole conversation again. And then parents are like, I'm like, hey, mom and dad, let me just forewarn you. Like, there's a letter coming, and it's kind of stupid, and it's a ridiculous letter. And mom and dad are like, oh, this is totally fine. Like, we talk like this all the time. I'm like, that's got to change. Like,
we're gonna
that's gonna change. And so it's like, let's start with you guys. How do we respond to something like that? It's calling it out. It's saying, I'm not okay with this, and setting a boundary. Saying, we're going to communicate respectfully. But so much of that conversation, though, is stop doing this. Don't talk like this. Don't text. Don't talk with your mouth open. Rather than parents saying, hey, go ahead and chew that food, and then let's talk. Or, hey, let's sit down and have a conversation, because it's all this negative direction. You know how to deal with that.
Well, and it's very action in the moment, but there's not a correction, like you said, like a suggestion, like, okay, please finish chewing, then we'll talk. Like, that makes sense.
It's very task oriented, and it's stop doing this. And if we can paint the picture for our kids or other people of, this is what I want to see. Like, stop talking to me like that is one way. The other would be, I would really appreciate if you communicate respectfully. And then giving them what you want to see, so that they're not guessing. They're not having to figure out what you're talking about, because they can say, oh, my mom said we want respectful communication. I get that. I know what that looks like. When my mom says stop doing this, I have no idea. It's like, Like, where this is out of left field.
Especially if this has become the normalized communication and suddenly it's like, stop doing that. And you're like, stop doing what? This is what I do.
This is who we are.
Yeah.
Like, this is us.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of this unfortunate piece, because it's like, this is us and we can do something better is the end of that, but no one wants to say it because it's uncomfortable to change those factors.
Yeah.
It's work, it's time, it's investment, it's unfortunately it's this uncomfortable relationship I have to have with my parents.
Yep.
Which is, in my world, it's like, I want that. Let's create that together.
Right.
And kids
dive in.
Mom and dad, I want independence, I want freedom, I want to be an adult until they're an adult. And then it's like, I have to show up. I have to go to work. I'm late. There's going to be a consequence. I'm just going to stop going to work.
Yeah.
Like, then I avoid the consequence. And it's this weird conversation that parents don't know how to navigate. And we're here for that. Like, that's the conversation I want to have with every parent out there, is how to set boundaries, how to have those hard conversations, and like, stop skirting around the matter.
Yeah.
Like, let's just hit it so that we can be done.
Yep.
It's going to begin in a couple weeks, in a couple months, at family holidays. It's going to come around the dinner table. We're going to flip on it.
Ooh, Thanksgiving's going to be good. Yeah.
Like, it's like, I don't want to see you anymore. Like, that's where it all goes. And it's, had we addressed in the beginning, it was not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But we blow it out of proportion because we're uncomfortable, feeling unsafe, don't know how to figure out how to get help.
Right.
As mom, dad, child, friend, anyone.
Yeah. And you would think, and maybe this happened for some people.
That's a big phrase. You
right.
Expect.
But you would think that when everyone was locked in the same house, that conversations would have improved. And my actual suspicion is that probably you got, 4 wireless routers, right? Mm-hmm. People in different spaces, and now we'll just text each other. So actually the communication, which was already that way because we were in 4 different places, right? We had one kid in middle school, one in high school, different school buildings, mom and dad at their jobs.
Yeah.
We were that modern, on the go, digitally connected family. And now we just locked each other in the house, but we kept the same patterns. We didn't change patterns. And maybe they got worse during that time.
Well, I would say it's hard to not get worse.
Yeah.
If you're not trying to get better. And I think that's kind of this weird reality, because you would think, because we're all stuck together, like in a business meeting, if we're all locked in the same room, we are getting stuff done.
Yeah.
At home, if we're locked in the same room, we're probably not talking.
Yep.
We are probably eating. We are probably really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we all know that something needs to be said, but we're not saying it because I can text you the same message, Randy, and we're going to be okay. And I avoid the discomfort. And it's tackling that discomfort and building comfort in that discomfort is where change is made.
Yep.
You don't learn, you don't grow if you stay in your comfort zone. The avoidance is great if you don't want to go anywhere. But for our students, for the students you work with, for those families that really want to be productive, it has to start there, and that's within the family system. And it's never too late. I think that's a really important message that I want to convey again is you can start at any level to find support, to have these conversations. What we don't want to do is dwell on the past.
Yeah.
And talk about when you were 7 years old, you did these 3 things that drove me absolutely nuts, and I hate you for it. Like, those don't matter. Let's move forward. Yeah. Start right here where we're at. Get to know each other again.
Yeah.
Figure out what we like. What are our hobbies? What's your favorite color? And start simple and grow from there.
Yep.
So that we don't have the expectation of being perfect as we did in the past.
Yeah.
Like let's reset that whole boundary and try again.
Yeah. And I would think, as we started the conversation by talking about stress, and to me, and you were talking about boundaries. And so reestablishing those boundaries and changing those communication patterns, to me, that would reduce my stress. If the expectations or the way that we were communicating as a family changed to something that was more stable, something that was more feedback based, to me, that would reduce so much stress on everyone's part.
Yeah. And Randy, in that same voice, think about how hard it is and how hard it would be to actually do that. That's why we don't do it. It's because it's difficult. Like, that's the easy.
I know. I just said it really simply, and I know that's like in reality, that's not a thing.
Great. And it's not happening.
Yeah.
Unless we make it happen. And it takes that commitment from everyone.
Yeah.
It can't be mom and dad harping on student or student harping on mom and dad. We got to slow down and come together and have that conversation as a family unit, regardless of where we are and what the internet is doing. Because like, yes, it will be stress relieving. And it's really going to be uncomfortable until that stress is relieved, because stress is natural in the body. Stress is always there. Like cortisol is going to be pouring in.
Yeah.
And we want dopamine. We want serotonin. We want all these other things.
Right.
And by avoiding, we get those.
Yeah. Back to the phone, right?
100%. Like I can get serotonin, dopamine on this little guy.
Yeah.
And what I can't get is that same serotonin if we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
That is maybe inconvenient or uncomfortable, or you're calling me out or I'm calling you out. Like those feedback loops are a big piece of that conversation that we have to start with early.
Yeah.
And I think the boundaries are huge too, because if I'm telling you what I need rather than what I don't want to see, it's going to be much easier for us to relate.
Yep.
And it's going to be much easier for you to follow through. But then I have to be willing to also address those boundary violations early on. Yeah. So that it's clear and it's not, you didn't get mad at me last night, but now all of a sudden you're getting mad at me. Like, I'm not following through. Follow through is really hard for all of us.
Yeah.
And that it takes work. And the hard part is it takes work, and I know it's worth it every step of the way.
Yeah.
But it's starting that is really the difficult part. And that's reaching out for help, finding the support you need, calling someone, and then taking that step of trusting an environment that you don't know.
Yeah. 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 Especially as we said, coming out of it was like strangers don't, you got to stay in your pod, right? Like, yeah.
Once a stranger, always a stranger with COVID.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And all of that. I mean, but I hope that those listening either live tonight or who are going to watch this on replay. Yeah. I hope everyone takes away at least something. And I don't even care what piece it is. If maybe there's a 50-year-old man or woman and they call one of their parents to start a conversation that they should have had, 25 years ago. Like, go for it, people. Yeah. Just because I think, I know we're all so stressed, and I find myself even getting into like a stress loop, and I'm like, I'm going to call someone or I'm going to tell them. And then I'm like, wait, they're probably going through XYZ. I need to, I'm the one stressing over this right now. They're probably not sitting at home stressing about the same thing. Yeah. Having that reset. And I know with my students, I'm kind of starting to do more check-ins with them when we sit down, like, all right, how was your week? What's going on? Because they're bringing all of that excess stuff into the conversations that we're having. And I can't help them unless I've got them in that right mindset to talk about what comes next.
I think it's scary when you think about next steps, like that stigma we talked about in the very beginning. That can be really scary if I'm trying to consider schools and I don't know how they're going to respond if they know that I go to therapy or they know I take medications. Like there's a lot of regulations that we have just in general. If an employer finds out that you're on an anxiety med, all of a sudden there's like this fear of rejection. And the unfortunate part is I'm sure it happens way more often than it should, where it's like, oh, that's not going to work because it doesn't fit into this and it's your mental health and we're not. But it's not. It's not a conversation that I think needs to demoralize the identity of an individual, yet it does.
Right.
That's where it gets really scary. And talking to people is like, who knows what you're going to think when I tell you what my depression's like.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember the last few years that I was reading college applications, it was kind of, forgive use of the word trendy, but it was trendy. Like legit, every kid had recently been diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, right? Yeah. So they were all, and that was kind of the hip thing to share. Like my grades weren't great in sophomore year because guess what? They discovered that I had this learning challenge. So now I'm great. And it was kind of like parents wanted their kids diagnosed because that was an explanation for challenges. It wasn't just like your kid's a B student. Doesn't mean they're dumb. They're just a B student. It was like, no, there's got to be like some kind of diagnosis.
And if mom and dad can't jump in and rescue, the diagnosis will. The medication will. My doctor note will. And but it's just like we're justifying the fact that effort has to go into it. With or without depression, ADHD, dysgraphia, any other learning difference. But mom and dad have to work too. Student has to work too. And parents want to work harder than their kids, I think, is a really unfortunate piece about the whole conversation we didn't even get into.
Yeah. I will be interested. I personally would think from the college admission perspective that particularly coming out of 2020 and these next few graduating classes, if I saw that a kid was talking with someone and working through, that actually would be a positive, because it would be, this kid hopefully is going to come to us with coping skills. Parents, don't take that as advice. Like, I legitimately don't know that this is what they're going to do, but I know that colleges have expanded a lot of their mental health and counseling offerings to help students in these situations. And so if you're a college student and you're listening, your school probably has something to support you based on what we've talked about tonight. But if a student came in and they're like, look, I already work with my therapist, I know the work we're doing together, I'd be like, great, this kid has a support system. They have started asking the questions. That wouldn't bother me. Again, this is not actual college admissions advice, but that's just where my head goes.
Yeah. And I think it's I don't know, it's kind of scary to think, what if?
Yeah.
And then, so I think that the big piece is, I think it's really important to have that support system and know that the kids aren't alone. Yeah. Because you're going to be much more successful having a community, whether that is your family, your friends, a support group, a club. You are going to be more successful as a young adult if you have those connections. Because you're going to learn those skills naturally. You're going to come in contact with people naturally, and you're going to grow and learn from that, rather than everything being so reliant on you being the best at everything and you being successful and you trying and you mastering all these skills. You have no idea where to begin.
What was I was reading, I think it was a year ago or 2 years ago, something about, no one has hobbies anymore that you just do for fun. Everything is a side hustle, or you have to be like semi-professional at it. And I'm like, what happened to the thing that you're not very good at, but you just love it? And you're just like, I'm just here. This is amazing.
That's all done in private.
I can't share this on Instagram, I'm
going to play guitar, but no one's going to hear me ever.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to do these model trains because I like them, but guess what? No one's going to know.
They're in the basement.
It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. We live in I don't think a vicious world is the right word, but we live in a world that almost attacks those pieces of identity. And that gets really scary for everyone involved.
And I think that's exactly the advice there. Find your community, and I think
build your community.
I love that. Be active.
It's like finding it's great. But once you're in it, you got to contribute, and that becomes creating and building. And it's, you have great ideas. Whether you are a young adult or a parent, you have incredible ideas. You just got to share them. The platform is in that community. That platform is out there. You just got to go get it.
And even if it's the thing that you're not good at, just dive in,
100%. Like, let yourself fail a little bit, but let yourself be happy. Like, find joy and a passion. Please. And stop worrying about what the world says. Who cares? Well, unfortunately, we do, which is kind of this backstory of the conversation we've had tonight. But let's try to work past that. Let's build the skills, the resilience, the self-awareness to be okay with being different. That's almost this faux pas nowadays, and we miss out on so much opportunity because we're trying to appease the neighbor and the friend. And we sacrifice our values, our priorities to fit into mold we're not supposed to be in.
Just to avoid being uncomfortable, which is not, there's a reason that it's uncomfortable. You don't enjoy it, but I think if you don't understand and can cope with being uncomfortable, then how can you enjoy the contrast that is when you are feeling that joy, when you are feeling completely comfortable?
And
you gotta have contrast, man.
It's experiencing both and feeling all the feels and feeling them well. And that's where we begin. It's feeling and feeling and feeling and letting it be okay. Let's normalize emotions for once. It has taken years and we're not quite there yet. And there's opportunity for it. We're getting there. I know. Fingers crossed.
I know. Seriously. But it's okay to feel your feelings. I think I want to put, before I forget, I'm going to put this back up because this is you guys.
That's us.
This is where you are.
Check us out. Feel free to reach out. We would love to help.
Yes. They're slightly snowed in, but Greg promises it's not forever.
And we're doing okay.
It's totally fine. So, yes. And what I will do is this will also go up on YouTube tomorrow, and Greg's going to have a link. And if anyone wants to follow up, I will also include IECA, as I mentioned, does have, if you are seeking some kind of therapeutic support, there are IECs, educational consultants, who can also help you.
Mhm.
Maybe you are on the West Coast and you want to have something closer to home, then definitely IECA can help connect you with people for that.
Absolutely.
So just go look, find a consultant. They can help you out as well. And then if you have any questions for me, you can reach out to me as well. Any questions that get dropped in the comments on Facebook, I will circle back around to you as soon as I'm able. And this has been, so I'll tell you what the emotion I'm feeling right now is gratitude, like legit.
I love it. Me too.
Because
I love being here.
This was so helpful. I loved the kind of some of the connections that we were able to make to where students are and where we hope they're going. And I just thank you.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, this was
Really
awesome.
I love talking, as you can tell.
Yeah. I think you're going to be a real success when you come out of your shell.
I like it. I'm hopeful. One day.
Well, we will sign off, and
Perfect.
maybe friends, if you have lots of questions, we'll persuade Greg to come back since he
I'm so ready, Randy. I'm so ready to be back. This was fantastic.
But we'll have to pick. We said we'll do like technology or something, because that's really that's what I want to dive into.
Deep, convoluted discussion will come soon.
Yeah, so amazing. But I will. So I have not yet scheduled my February guest, folks. Stay tuned for that. Keep following the page. But again, Greg, thank you to everyone who tuned in, and we'll be back with another episode in February. Thanks, everybody.